Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Town of Nantucket Board of Appeals is being conducted hybrid pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting, the Town of Nantucket Board of Appeals is convening in person and by video conference using the Zoom app as posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that some attendees are participating by video conference. If you're using Zoom, please be aware that other people may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Okay, so we have, I guess I'll do attendance then. So obviously myself and Elisa Allen are here. John Brescher?
Here.
Jim Mondani?
Here.
And is Lisa on? No. Do you want me to text her?
I can send her a text right now.
Okay.
I did just want to provide you with an update. I know she
Sure.
was traveling today. She emailed me at 12:51 after I had forwarded the board the latest version of the draft and just said, "That is great, Billy. I had concerns with that language as well." So let me text her and just see if she's able to
Okay.
get on.
So when she does get on, I assume that language is the paragraphs 20,
Yeah, it was in
20
yep, sorry.
23. Sorry, I had 22 and 23, but then it was 23, 24, and 25, I think, that people had questions about.
Correct. The last version of the draft before the one you all received today at like
Yep.
12:30.
Yep.
Numbers 23, 24, and 25.
Yeah, so I know Elisa had emailed a question asking if council could explain those. So once we get Lisa on, I think that would be,
He can just explain the new version. We don't need to go back into
yeah.
whatever he
whatever,
edited.
wherever we are now. But it's the same.
Just,
Susan?
Yep.
Hi, good afternoon. George Pucci from KP Law. I just wanted to specify, I received a question about that language from Elisa, and I also received comments from Jim.
Yeah.
And Jim had comments on that, but also a number of other issues. So the latest version I sent Billy is two versions. One, a track change of the final version that was sent Friday that addresses those paragraphs that you just referenced, and doing my best to incorporate the other comments I received from Jim. So before you, so that you don't have to sift through the entire decision, there's a markup of just those sections where I tried to incorporate Jim's additional comments in here and there. I also fixed a couple of typos, and then I eliminated the part about the hypothetical project referred to in Warner Lowy's law review article. And I should just explain to the board, the only reason I added that is it had relevance to me in terms of open space. You know, that obviously there's open space needs for this parcel. That was a big part of your decision. And I just, I thought that hypothetical project that was referenced in the law review article is a good highlight of something, there was more than 50% open space on that hypothetical project that, you could obviously use for above ground stormwater management systems and that type of thing. So, but I certainly don't feel wedded to it. And it's entirely appropriate if you want to strike that in its entirety. So the latest version I gave you includes striking reference to that hypothetical project in its entirety, and then just noting at the end, as you had noted to me, that that the board had made many efforts at a good faith dialogue and the applicant declined. So that addition that I put about the hypothetical project is removed entirely from this latest version that I gave you.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, I did just want to say Lisa's online now, and she came on right around the time George started speaking.
Okay, great.
Madam Chair, can I just address that removal with the board?
Sure.
Actually, with George, I drafted that in a vacuum, George. I didn't mean to come out like on fire. I just didn't know like to what extent I was explaining why I think it should be moved. So that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah, your comments are actually well taken. I mean, so I think that, it's entirely fine to take it out. The thing about other, I know that there was language in there about, a collaborative effort and others, a dialogue with other parties other than the ZBA. That is actually a contemplated practice. I know that there was an issue with the select board, doing what they did in this particular case, with the appeal that you had pending. But the process really does call for stakeholders to kind of get together and look at alternate plans. And in fact, that's what the ZBA in this case had done. As we said earlier in the decision, that you had Ed Marchand and Cliff Ballmer sit down. There was a working group. Interested parties could give their input to that. So that was the type of collaborative process I was referring to there. But again, really what I found very relevant about that hypothetical project had to do with the open space, that, you don't need to build a soccer field there, which is referenced in that hypothetical project, but certainly 5 acres for a soccer field and the 5 acres of open space. And that was a larger parcel that he had in the hypothetical example. So that was the only reason I cited it.
I just had never talked about it, didn't know about the other scenario. It was just completely new to me, and that's why I didn't remember ever talking about it or cross-referencing that project with this project. So that was just where I wasn't understanding.
Yeah, and that's entirely appropriate. I can't help myself. I get creative on a Friday afternoon, and I was trying to.
yeah, no, that's understandable. I mean, that's why I was saying I was, making points on my own without a dialogue like this, where you were coming from, or
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And I did make an effort. You had some other comments on there about some, additions here and there. I tried my best to incorporate that and not leave anything out that you had, but also kind of make it so it's not redundant with other parts of the decision, and also to try to expedite your process, that I was trying to take your additional comments and blend them with the prior deliberation session so that I could give you what I was really hoping would be a final version that Billy could just print and you guys could vote today. So that was what I tried to do there.
Okay. I haven't had Madam Chair, can I speak?
Sure.
I haven't had a chance to compare them, but can you just explain what you incorporated, what you didn't?
Yeah, happy to. Is Susan, for you? Sorry, I'm having a direct dialogue with Jim because I'm looking at it on the screen, but is that okay,
Yeah.
Susan?
Would it be helpful if I share the document while you do this?
Sure, and we go through one by one, kind of quickly, or not quickly. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I just trying to bring Susan in this because you're chair, Susan, so tell me what to do. And I was going to respond if Billy puts it up.
We can go through, I'm just looking at the Friday versus today, the red lines. Did you take out the mention of the Kristen Mello testimony?
No, that is.
And did you add that, or was that suggested to be added?
I added it only because at the last deliberations, that was one of the, I think it was a point that Jim had raised, and then I think the board talked about it. And so I know what it was Jim had sort of generally referred to the tipping point letter, 10 points. And I went back through that, and then I looked at the materials that were submitted, and I tried to glean from that what I thought the board was finding compelling. And I know that Kristen Mello's testimony, I was at the hearing. I thought that the board members did find that compelling. So I had included that specifically on paragraph 10 on your findings. And then the other one that Jim had mentioned, and I think the board was too, was Dr. I always
Lepre.
botch the name,
Lepre.
sorry, Lepre.
Yeah.
And then Jim had added some additional language, which I attempted to put in this latest version for you. And that's kind of where we're at. And then Jim had some stuff about traffic, but which I did try to add as well. I should call your attention, because there's no sense in trying to hide it. I stayed away from, because remember, this is a de novo hearing and you have interested intervening parties as well who have had their own witnesses testify before you and who will also participate in this public hearing. So I tended to stay away from former employees of, say, the fire department or, any town department. And I focused on input that you would receive from actual current department heads and town boards and committees. So that was one part that I did leave out that Jim had suggested about, I forget their names, but basically former employees of the fire department. I did not add Jim's, proposed revisions in that regard. Because again, and I also think, it was very clear, and it's in your decision, that both the police chief and fire chief talked about the second means of egress that should be farther away from the single means of access and egress. So, that's definitely going to be an issue for the evidentiary hearing. But, my recommendation would be kind of stick to, when you're citing a decision, I thought that the department heads covered the issues for you. And then
Agreed.
again, whoever testifies at the hearing, that will be a decision for a different day. It's all submitted through pre-filed testimony.
I think, George, that makes sense. The follow-up question is, so adding in specific, like the quote by Dr. Lepre, do you feel like that strengthens? I mean, I'm a little.
I don't mind it because, and again,
Okay.
this was suggested by Jim. I mean, I had trouble paraphrasing it, and I thought that Jim's quote from it, sort of said it better than I was trying to say it. And so I think it's fine. It didn't,
Okay.
it doesn't unduly lengthen your decision. It just adds to paragraph 15. So I was fine with that if the board is.
Okay. As long as you feel comfortable with it. I mean, as we said on Friday, or whenever that was, Thursday, everyone, I think everyone at some point said, that we defer to your judgment. And are you talking Lisa's hand is up? Yeah, okay. So if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. Lisa, I see you have your hand up.
I had a question. I think the only reason to have the barber's testimony in there would be if there was any reason to address the water flow issue, right?
To have the former fire.
No, I think Nate Barber was the one that brought up, or one of the barbers.
Oh, Barber.
Bo Bobber.
Bo Barber, about not having enough water to, fight the veranda house, and, is that a potential issue? And so that would be the only reason I would guess that naming them in particular is a different issue than the two means of egress in and out of the development. But again, I defer to everybody else in terms of whether or not we need to make that.
Yeah, and the only thing I would note to the board, that was not the opinion of your current fire department, the fire chief.
Right.
So look, it's your decision. And if you want to add that for Jim's suggestion, I'm sure Billy can do that onto another final that you can have delivered to you there. But I mean that, I don't like to try to defend a decision that our own witnesses sort of have indicated a disagreement with. So I'm not making the call. I'm just saying that was not consistent with what your department had said.
Okay.
I was going to say the same thing. I think that we heard a lot of back and forth on the water, and I think there was it's a little bit different for me hearing hired experts versus what people that work or worked for the town are saying. I agree with George that I think that part of it should be left out of this because it's the opinions within the town that don't agree, and I don't want to hurt our position, but I do think that when this is appealed, which you know is going to happen, that will be flushed out more there. I just don't know that this decision is the place to call it out, given the information that we got during the hearing.
And his testimony is, again, listed at the end of the decision, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And, you know, and again, you know, my statement about that doesn't mean he doesn't have every right to testify in the HAC proceedings. You know, any lay witnesses and expert witnesses can testify in the proceeding. So I'm sure, you know, if Tipping Point feels strongly about his testimony, I'm sure we're going to see it again. So it's not that it wouldn't have any preclusive effect on his ability to testify.
Right.
Okay. I mean,
Lisa
and I
has a
think,
question.
Oh, go
Sorry,
ahead, Lisa,
Go
if you
ahead,
want to
Lisa.
finish.
Sorry.
well, I just was going to say, and relative to Dr. Lepre, I thought that his whole view on the situation was just a different look at it that we never really even talked about in terms of our deliberations. Like he brought up something in terms of being able to just handle a crisis of that magnitude on the island medically that I don't think we ever even really thought about. So I do like the idea of adding that if George is okay with it, if he thinks it doesn't complicate the decision in any way.
No, I was fine with it, and I did. And again, it was Jim's latest round after your last deliberations. I did specifically incorporate that quote into your decision, paragraph 15. It's worth for sure. I mean, it raises the question, you know, well, that applies to any project that you have on the island, but the fact is, you do have a heavy concentration, high density in an area that can be jammed up with traffic at the site. You have limited responsibility at the hospital itself. You all respected his opinion on the issue, and I definitely think it's worth having in your decision. And I think it's a perfectly legitimate issue to raise.
Madam Chair, can I just interject? I also want to be, I think the Bo Barber letter is of major significance in this. And Bob, what was the other man's name that used to be the chief of the fire department?
Bates.
Bates. I mean, I think they spoke, yes, they're former fire department employees and employees of the town, but, you know, they have knowledge that the current fire chief doesn't because he's new to the island and new to the fire department here on Nantucket. But I think these two guys spoke as members of the community that also have a lot of knowledge because of their time working at the fire department, that maybe the new chief just, you know, because he hasn't been here as long, just doesn't know. So I think they both took a lot of time and made some really big, strong points that support our vote. So with that, I don't, unless it would hurt to have their two letters involved, I don't see how it would hurt. You know, they don't work for the town anymore, and they are members of the community. So I would like to see their letters and their thoughts included. I think they're significant. They were a huge impact on me listening to them. And I've lived here for 36 years year round. And, you know, they've both lived here a long time too. And they have experience, on the ground experience fighting fires here. So I think what they had to say was super important. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I would agree with Elise on that. I just come at this as putting more than less in, and it doesn't, I look at it as it doesn't really hurt. And, you know, and it certainly, I think it helps, like Elisa says.
Thank you, Jim.
So can we add something that just talks about the fire risk, and that two people that have worked or work for the department that have seen, this kind of that have good knowledge, actually, in some ways, maybe more than the current fire chief does, in terms of how this thing plays out, and put in their opinions. I mean, the letters are already attached, but I think if Elisa and Jim feel strongly that it was something that really helped impact their decision, then maybe it should be listed in some way.
Not just the document listing it,
Yeah,
the quotes that I put.
quotes.
Yeah, the highlights.
Yeah, particularly if it was something that really swayed you, Elisa, or didn't sway you, but you thought about it and you were like, wow, that's impactful, then it should be listed maybe.
So if the board wants to add that, perhaps.
George, can I ask you a question, George,
Yeah,
before we
sure.
move forward? I just want to make sure and ask you, do you determined not to include those for a reason? Can you explain more why you didn't before we add them in? Because my concern is that since our current town officials say one thing and we have former officials saying something, I don't want to. I think we have a strong decision and a strong reasoning. And you had said at the beginning, you have three things, and you push those. And I just am wary to use Elisa's word last time, to dilute our message and give arguments to the developer and or just how HAC is going to interpret if we're putting strong reliance on what former employees said versus the current. And the former employees definitely had powerful things to say, and it will come up in the appeal. But if you could talk more about your thought process when you originally decided not to include them, so I understand better.
Yeah, it wasn't really a conscious decision not to include them. What I tried to do is I went, after your last deliberations, I went back to that material that Jim had cited, and I tried to, some of it is kind of, parts of it like blend together and they're a little redundant. I'm not sure what they say. So what I tried to do is pick out what I thought from attending all your hearings were the points that you wanted to bring out. So it wasn't a conscious decision to exclude those. As I said just now, meeting with you now, I tend to go by what your department heads recommend. I mean, your fire chief had opined on that. It certainly is a thing that occurred after the matter should have been remanded to you. When they were talking about the veranda fire, that was something, changed circumstances, because you didn't have that at the time of your original decision. That delay in time that the matter should have been remanded to you, that happened after. So if you find that relevant to this, you're free to add it. I don't think it hurts the decision. If it's the board's decision to add it, what I would recommend is maybe between paragraph 14 and 15 of other issues on page 7. I'm going on the track change version.
Can I also just say one quick thing, that I don't think that Bo Barber or Bob Bates said anything in contradiction to the current fire chief. I just think they had different points as to why this is an unsafe project and why they have concerns. I think they all stated, sort of, including the current fire chief, stated different reasons. There was no one saying that the other person was incorrect. I think they all contributed by making different points.
So maybe that's how we phrase it.
Yeah. I don't think they're in conflict with each other. I just think they all made strong points, and I don't want to miss those points, because like I said, they had a huge impact on opening my eyes to stuff I would have never known.
Okay.
So we're kind of editing on the fly here. Do we agree that I think I'm getting the consensus. You definitely want to add it. Do we agree that it should be between 14 and 15 on
Yes.
other issues?
Let's see,
That makes
we
sense.
haven't heard from, we haven't heard anything from John Brusher yet. So John, do you have any?
I'm okay. Thanks, Susan. Generally I'm okay with it as long as it's not going to be detrimental to the decision in any way or our position. And if George thinks it's fine and we're saying that it's sort of not contradicting the current town employees, then fine, and that gets us to a decision we can all sign. Great. And for what it's worth, George, I think I would put it between 14 and 15 as well under other issues. I think that's the logical place for it to go.
Okay, so does anyone have any suggested language?
Madam Chair, can I
Yep.
share the screen?
Yes,
We need to
please.
edit this because I have to run this down
Yep.
at the end of the meeting.
Yep. So we're on page,
And you'll be able to renumber it, Billy, after that? Because 15 will become 16? Or do you want us to do it?
See
Okay.
that?
I mean, I would start it off, maybe the board also finds compelling testimony of the former fire chief and current, concern, whatever really Jim thinks. I mean, I hate to just defer it to Jim, but he had language about it, I think. So I would kind of follow, if he has some suggested, how that paragraph would be worded.
Yeah.
It's just one paragraph, so it should be pretty easy.
Do you think it's important to put their former titles after their names? Like former chief of fire department or former employee, former firefighter, or?
Yeah, yes,
100%.
Yeah, I think
titles are good. Titles are good if you have them.
That's what I was going to say, as long as we list the correct titles, because I don't believe Mr. Bates was ever the chief. I believe he was deputy chief.
Oh, was he? I thought he
Yeah,
was the
so I think
interim
we need to be
chief.
careful if we're going to put former titles, because I can look back at emails.
I would like to put them, if there are any, that I think it gives what they have to say more legitimacy.
Titles are important because any type of forum, you go by the title, not by a name. So, I mean, you can put their name, but their title would be better. So I guess it would be like former deputy chief and firefighter or something like that.
Right.
Who responded to the, I don't know how you want to word it. It's fine by me, but.
You look on LinkedIn, he's Bob Bates is listed as retired deputy fire chief, but I don't know if
Okay.
I don't know if that's accurate. I'm just Googling.
I know I can confirm Mr. Bates was the former deputy chief.
Okay.
I don't know Mr. Barber's title. I don't have anything that alluded to his former title. I think we could put former firefighter there.
Firefighter. Yeah, that seems right.
I think I have a cell number.
And I'll type as soon as anyone wants to dictate.
Um, we could say the board finds expert witnesses, George. Former Assistant Fire Chief Stephen.
I think we should, Jim, I think we should follow the same language that George used for other ones, saying, like he started to say, the board credits testimony.
Yeah,
from
that's where I
the
was going.
former.
Yeah, the board, I would say the board, oh, yeah, something like that. The board also credits testimony of
Right.
former
A
deputy chief.
fire
as well
chief
as-
and
yeah.
firefighter who said whatever we want to add there.
Bo says firefighter.
Is that how he spells? Is it B-E-A-U?
A-U.
DEAU.
Uh, What, I'm sorry, I'm having a blank. What's his last? Barber.
Barber.
Sorry.
Jim, where in your email does it talk about the firefighter and the deputy chief?
No, I'm looking. I'm
Oh, I have it. It's
15, I think. Paragraph or number 5 on my list.
paragraph
Oh, no. Yeah.
no, number 2,
Yeah.
but it doesn't
Number
mention
2?
Bob Bates. It just says
Yeah. I didn't.
no retired Nantucket firefighter Bill Barber are credible that these issues they raised are matters of critical public health concerns. It's not possible to prevent the chemical contamination of the town's water supply. I don't know if
Okay,
that's
but that's
mentioned somewhere else.
Kristen, so that's not the fire.
And then he says
So-
a hypothetical fire any larger than the veranda house combined with wind would quickly overwhelm our current water resources and leave our personnel resources completely ineffective.
Yeah. So you can just put that there.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah,
want
end
to
it ineffective.
Yeah.
And then George, did you include the fire chief, the reference to the fire chief, a quote from the fire chief's letter?
Steve Murphy's letter?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. Sorry. Those are the two things I left out from what the rest of what you gave. I tried to incorporate here and there.
Okay.
Anything other than your current fire chief or police chief, I didn't put here anywhere.
Where
Okay.
is Steve Murphy's note? Is that in your email, Jim?
Yeah.
It's
It's in
on,
number 5.
Number 5. Okay.
Here, I'm just, so I eliminated Bob Bates and I have just Mr. Barber, and I copied and pasted what you had in that email, Jim. Do we
Yeah.
want to quote that whole thing and the board
Yeah.
credit
I mean, I'm
testimony?
fine with that.
I
obviously.
think we should get rid of the, I think we should end it at ineffective.
And not put in the thing about LA.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that probably makes sense.
Yeah,
But
because
that's-
we
I
should
agree-
focus
I agree with
more
that
on-
also.
put in the Barber presentation of blah, 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 right? Put in the date of his,
And then veranda house, do we need to put brackets that reference what it is? Because they're not
How are
on.
they gonna know?
They're not gonna know what that is, but
Did we not
Just-
talk about veranda otherwise? Oh, no? No, I guess we don't. Okay. Yeah, probably not a bad idea.
I mean, that's a pretty significant event. I'm fine with you not defining it, or you could put a paren, whatever. But if
I
that
was just gonna say, I was just gonna say, hotel.
And give the address so they can, if they needed to look it up.
yeah, I mean, it's a pretty compelling picture if you
Yeah.
Google it, the veranda house fire.
what
It's
is-
totally up to you.
Address.
Do we know any stats about veranda house that we can add, like the worst fire in 30 years or whatever since the Great Fire?
I mean, I should interject. I think, and I may have it wrong, but I thought what the concerns were from the former guys who were involved in fighting that fire was that you could run out of water, and that, and also if you have something like that, you could contaminate water because you're drawing everything, and
right.
you get all this firefighting stuff, and you could end up having a PFAS plume go as a result of it or something like that. So, but
The address.
one thing
three-step
about
lane,
veranda that
one and
that
two.
might be distinguishable is that you've got sprinklered buildings here, and I think what their point is, well, even if it's sprinklered, if it gets out of control quickly, that's not going to do it with the wind, and it could end up a conflagration. But I thought veranda house was different, that you had, was sort of like, I mean, it's a miracle that they put out that fire where it was located, because
Right,
it's not a
yeah.
sprinklered building, right? It wasn't like a historic building.
Yeah.
it
So-
basically,
Maybe you could just
any-
say three-step lane Nantucket.
right,
But when you type in veranda house, it immediately comes up fire.
fire. And all of them say like it could have been the second Great Fire had it not been able to be controlled.
The Meredith plaintiffs that are referred to in this decision had actually filed a motion with the Housing Appeals Committee to reopen the record. So they should know what the veranda house fire is, because I mean, it was denied, the motion was denied, but the issue has certainly been brought to their attention before. I personally am comfortable with you referring to the veranda house fire because it's a major event that involves Nantucket, and I don't think you need an address or anything like that. Like I say,
Okay,
you Google it and it comes up, a photo of it.
Okay.
Sorry, just getting back to the front end of this. So we have Bo Barber. I heard Lisa say you wanted the date included for
I
when he
thought that
testified.
the little parentheses that Jim had, testimony from, what did it say? Bo
No,
I
Barber.
don't think we included that anywhere else, though.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Did we? I don't think we did for like
We didn't
Kristen Mello or.
on Dr. Leprie's. That's why I'm just trying to follow that a little bit.
That's
So I
fine.
could say with Barbers, I could say who raised. Should we switch up the wording a little bit or keep it the same? Because I feel like we should, or should we just say who provided the following statement?
I'd call it testimony like the others,
Who provided the following testimony?
or who testified X, Y, Z. Maybe sum it up. I mean, because I was speaking to be corrected, if you want to correct me, about what the concerns really were. Is I thought that they were saying you could run out of water and that something could become out of control very quickly that you wouldn't be able to handle just because they're sprinklered.
So
I thought we were steering clear of that, though, because we heard from other professionals from the town that that was not the case. So again, my concern is, if, as long as George is comfortable with it, I am, but my recollection is that we were steering away from the, specifically the water issue because we weren't getting consistent feedback from different areas.
But did Bo fight the veranda fire and the current fire chief wasn't here at that time? That's maybe why
I don't know
they
the
have
answer to
differences.
that, but I also think that there's a difference between anecdotal and numbers, right? And so having testimony from, and I'm not discrediting his testimony, and I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm just trying to think of how this is going to land on Hack and how the developer is going to use it. And so I'm concerned that we're going to put this in about, the firefighters saying they're going to run out of water, whatever, and then the response is going to be like, well, the other town officials over here for the water company and this one and that one said that it's fine. And so then it's going to, that whole area of local concern is going to be blown up. And I'm playing devil's advocate here, but I just want to make sure that we're thinking critically about
Susan,
next steps. Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I somewhat agree with you. I just, I think we're again getting too caught up in the appeal and how it looks for the appeal. I find it easier to look at this when I just say, okay, what are the local concerns that outweigh
Mm-hmm.
the need for affordable housing? And whatever testimony we credit,
Yeah.
I don't know. But it
No, I mean,
sounds like
fire
you're not
safe- fire
crediting
safe-
his testimony, which I understand. But how do we deal with that, George?
Yeah, let's try to figure it out. I don't mind adding it in terms of,
Okay.
because I do think that point is well taken, that you're the experts on your local concerns. You have heard the testimony over a several month period. You know what's credible to you and what not. And you should put that in without worrying about how it may or may not be treated on appeal. I think that
Okay.
that means that I think that that's a reasonable way of looking at it. And I don't think your draft decision is getting to the point of the concern I raised before of, well, I don't like to take an approach that you just throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. I don't think that it comes off that way at all, even if you raise this additional issue. So I don't think it's a problem as long as you're comfortable with the wording on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's one of the reasons why I just kind of worked this stuff in so that it wasn't, like you said, George, just a spitting
Okay.
out of a list of issues.
So-
what does the board think of?
I like that.
So are you screen sharing, Billy? what
Yeah,
you
I'm
typed?
screen sharing, and I'd put in after Bo Barber, who was present for the Veranda House fire and testified.
And he was definitely there. That's in his testimony.
Mhm.
Okay. Just want to make sure we get that right.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, there is a point about the fact that you are an island and you don't have, I live in Sherburne. If
Yeah.
there's a major fire in Sherburne, 8 fire departments, including a city from the city of Framingham, can come in and help our local fire department. You don't have that on Nantucket. You're your own. You're on an island. So
think that's-
the fact of being concerned about a conflagration in a densely packed area with traffic concerns, I is a totally legitimate local concern. So
So
as
then-
long as you're
then-
comfortable, I don't mind adding it.
Is
So
that?
then why don't we add that at the end of 15 as well, like that, a sentence like that, because that was brought up
Yeah.
several times. And it is true that we don't have, whatever they called it, the shared resources or the
Other towns.
Mutual aid, yeah, because
mutual aid, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. And that's true for mutual aid for the hospital as well. And I think Dr. Lepre made that point, but that's true for the hospital as well as the fire services that,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's done by alarms, so I think we can only have a 1 alarm fire. Is that right?
right.
I
mean, yeah.
and I do recall also, I don't even know who said it at what point, but there was at the time that they said it, there was a big fire of an inn or something in Hingham, and it gave the statistics about how many firefighters showed up and how many adjoining towns, and it was like, I mean, it was impressive, and we have none of that. So.
Yeah, and weather events and fire events are more and more unpredictable. It definitely is not a frivolous concern to have in there. But let's try to, we have logistical issues now about getting a final decision. So if we could try to get it in there that Billy has something and you're comfortable.
yeah, so let's add a sentence about the lack of mutual aid. And then see where we're at.
From adjoining towns or whatever.
Yeah.
Should I, like, as we are an island, or as, how should I end that?
Be-
How would they know that?
being an island, minimum hour boat ride away, although the slow boats would have to carry a fire truck if that was going to try to come, or a water truck.
Let's not even get into that logistical question.
Right? Like,
Being an island.
Yeah, and I think
island, there's no, there's an absence of, there is
no opportunity
aid
for mutual
available.
aid to address a major emergency event.
There's no mutual aid for emergency events.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For major emergency events. I mean, you don't need mutual aid for a regular emergency. Somebody has a heart attack or,
No.
Good. Okay, no, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I remember during the veranda, it was brought up. There is a contingency plan, but it's obviously not immediate. Like they have other towns on the Cape around, but they have to be run over here by the Coast Guard or something,
I think we can get rid of.
which is what happened with the veranda.
Yeah. The board notes the lack of mutual aid available to Nantucket from being,
Get rid of that comma.
well, there are no adjoining towns.
Yeah, that's, Maybe
Just
get
say
rid of
being
that.
an island
Yeah.
and get rid of the no direct route. Just say the board notes the lack of mutual aid available to Nantucket being an island
Major emergency events.
for major emergency events. So
No, that would be at the end, right? Or are you putting it there?
Yeah, I don't, the
I
board
think you
notes
wanted
the
to,
lack of mutual aid available to Nantucket.
being an island with no,
you could just say available to the island of Nantucket with, for major emergency events.
yeah, to the island of Nantucket. That makes sense. And then they remember it's an island.
And I'm not looking at your screen. Is that all added in a new paragraph 15?
15, it's at the end of 15, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that's where it should go.
Mutual aid available to the island of Nantucket for major emergency events.
Does that look,
Can we say the board finds this as, do we need to say the board
Yeah.
finds this as a, as a critical, matter of local concern?
Yes.
of or for local concern?
I don't know. How does it go, George? Okay.
Yeah.
Local concern. And that wants to be before the leopard testimony. I mean, he just reinforces it, I guess, but
I think it reads well. I'm not looking at what Billy has on the screen, but I'm looking at Dr. Lepre's amended test citation from Jim, and it would still follow very well.
okay.
I
even
think
if
so
you-
too.
Because he's talking mutual aid in terms of a major event that if you have several burn victims go to the hospital at one time. He's not really talking about putting something out. So
Yeah,
there's two
no.
issues of mutual aid. It's both the emergency medical treatment and also the ability to address a major emergency through first responders. So they're two different issues. I think it reads well.
And
Okay.
Billy,
just to interject, Bo Barber texted back, yes, he was at the fire first, the company that first responded.
Oh, great.
Okay.
He used
So
the
that's good
phrase
for
first,
confirmation, but we're
Yeah.
not supposed to there's no public comment in this.
Oh, okay, I was
yeah.
just defining.
Yeah. That's why I just
A
said that.
question.
So, yeah,
Okay.
that's why I just said that. That's great for confirming, but we're not, that's all he's doing.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, can we, in that last sentence, the board finds instead of this,
Yep.
maybe the foregoing or something. I don't know what this,
Sure.
because we kind of have we talk about two different things in this paragraph.
Yep.
The foregoing issues, or the issues, or finds the issues described above to be.
Then it's critical matters of local concern. Because if you're going to use issues described above, it can't be a critical matter. Critical matter. Okay. George, are you comfortable with that? Can you see the screen?
No, but I'm following along. I'm listening.
Can you not see the screen share?
Yeah,
I don't know why I can't see that.
Can you hit, if you
Maybe
hit
if I-
the Zoom icon, it'll come back?
Oh, there it is.
So yeah, why don't you give that a read and you can tweak it as needed.
Can we just, on that, the board notes, because this is kind of a little different than the above, say, the board has also heard testimony about the lack of mutual aid. And then the rest is that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Unless someone can remember who that, I don't remember who specifically talked about it.
Billy, is it throwing your spacing off? I noticed the indents.
I can make sure that's all set. I think
All right.
the track changes is always kind of difficult to edit. I always
Oh.
take it off for final editing.
I was going to
Okay.
read, the board also heard testimony about the lack of mutual aid. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you, Lisa.
that good?
Yep.
Well, and would you just say, and finds the issues described above to be of critical matters of local concern?
Sure.
Sounds a little redundant with the board again, but. No, we're not writing an English paper.
It's good. Those are good style comments.
Okay.
That's
Are there
great.
any other comments or revisions from anyone on the board?
The only other thing and I don't want to belabor getting this thing done, but I know we got the Affordable Housing Trust and you referenced that what they provided to us, but we really didn't address where we are with affordable housing. And I don't know if that's important to put that blurb in there, that really none of the organizations brought that to our attention. And, I guess it could be an important factor when we're determining whether these critical matters outweigh the need for affordable housing.
So we talked about that at the meeting we had in the first week of March, and the notes I have for that is that we talked about the status or need for housing now, and the notes I have that was not it was not viable to deny, and I have on safe harbor, need for housing now versus need for housing versus denial approval for conditions. So I don't know, George, I thought we had not to use the word shy again, but had shied away from that specific point. Was there a reason that, or can you explain again why we were not focusing on the current need for affordable housing?
Sorry, I'm trying to talk. I realized I was muted.
Okay.
I combed through the record for that. I do think it would be relevant to have in here, but I didn't see anything about it, so I didn't want to make a representation. Being in safe harbor is different than the issue of how much affordable housing you have and what the efforts have been and all of that. We're not waiving anything. We can certainly raise it in the HAC proceedings. We will, but I haven't seen any testimony on it to your board about what your status is.
Yeah, I mean, it would just, it's that part of the scale. There's the affordable housing and then local concerns. And we really haven't been apprised of, where we are, at least since this started. And I know the developer doesn't think that should be considered, but I guess that's something that you would bring up later.
I think that if we had something to say about it, Billy, sorry, Billy, you could raise it where the Affordable Housing Trust made comments, because we noted in there in paragraph 21, I think it would be now 22, that they had recommended reduced scale and additional buffering, more green space and recreational space, and expanded affordability tiers. You could add a sentence to that paragraph about, I don't know. I don't really know what your status is on that, about what your housing is. Remember your first decision, you talked about efforts that the town had made and that you didn't want everything concentrated in one location, but I don't know how things have changed. Your case involves an interesting, unusual issue that the statute speaks in terms of the regional need for housing, affordable housing. And what's funny is, like, you don't have a regional need for, like, nobody's going to seek affordable housing on Nantucket so that they can then work and go. Yeah. So it's funny that I think is a unique legal issue for Nantucket, that there really isn't a regional need for housing. You have a certain local need for housing, workforce housing, that type of housing. So maybe that's more relevant, but I just don't know what your
Yeah.
status is on that. I don't know your percentage. I don't know where they're located.
Yeah,
I guess I'm speculating. I mean, I just think it's better with everything that's being done in the community, but we don't have anything that we've heard or.
and in some ways, I almost feel like it's better not even to bring it up.
Yeah.
think
I
we'll have
agree.
concerns about it, even if we, I don't want to use the, the fact that we have done a better job with, housing as the reason that we are going to deny this. I think even if we needed it, it still seems like this is just not the right project.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree
Right.
with Lisa.
Yeah, good point.
And I agree with you, though, nobody's been upfront about it, and I don't know that there's anybody that actually has the answer.
I
One point,
agree
Tucker
with
Holland
that,
said
too.
he thought
Well
we'd
said.
broken it. And then the opponents have said we are, but Christy Ferrantella, you would think she would come out and make a statement about it if we were. So, okay.
Just one procedural question, George. So we're okay with maybe we did this before where Susan signs in the way the signature page is the way it is. We don't all need to sign.
Yeah, if you end up with a decision that you're happy with, I would recommend making a motion and follow it along the lines where we have Roman numeral 3 decision. And then in that you're both voting the decision and you're voting to authorize Susan to sign it as chair. That she'd be duly authorized and your vote would be recorded in this decision. In fact, what I'd recommend you do if you get that far would be, based on the foregoing findings on a motion of whoever that is, seconded by whoever that is, the board voted, and assuming it's a 5-0 vote, I've got it, the board voted 5-0, and I listed all of your names to deny as proposed, skipping through at deliberations, and to authorize the chair, Susan McCarthy. So I would maybe do your motion consistent with the text on the decision. And then that way, Billy can print it and Susan can sign it and you can file it with the town clerk immediately.
Okay, well, it's going to have to be immediately because it needs to be filed in, like, if we're going to do it, it needs to be filed in
A
like,
little less than 3 hours we have.
Billy, do you have gas? in
less
your
than that. It's going
car?
to, yeah, she closes at
3:30,
4.
3:45.
3:45,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. We have
3:45
less
o'clock
than 2
now.
hours.
Okay.
2 hours.
So.
Billy, are your tires full and do you have gas in the car?
Oh, yeah. And I have planning board at 4, so I'm just letting you all know, I am going to run this down, get it stamped, and I'll email you all tomorrow because
Okay.
I'd like to take a break before my 7-hour
Yeah,
meeting.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure you want to get this filed and off your chest as soon as you possibly can.
Yeah, and then I'm just saying, I'm not going to email you all a filed copy because I'm not
Okay.
going to make it back to the office. I'm going to go direct to my planning board meeting at 4. I need a lunch break here.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Are we ready to make that motion?
So we're ready?
Described it?
Sure.
Sure.
If someone's ready to, we can,
Billy, if you could send that to me, I hate to cut into your lunch. I'm not sure
No, I'll be able to, I'll do my best. I'm just, I'll definitely get you a copy if I have to. I'll have the ladies at the clerk.
well, do you want
Email
to
me a
send it
copy
to
right
George
this
and then he
second.
can just start renumbering it and stuff? Do you want to send it to George so he can, is that what he's offering to?
No, he
No,
wants a
I
copy of the
I
files.
wanted a
Oh,
copy
oh,
in
Yeah,
case we have
I'll
to
get it
serve.
George.
yeah. Okay, sorry.
And then if I get it to
misunderstood.
George, I'll just copy, you all will get a copy.
Okay, so does anybody have any more comments, questions, changes, revisions, suggestions, or are we ready to entertain a motion? Okay. So who would like to make that, who would like to be the one to make the motion?
I will. I'd like to make a motion.
Oh, so, hold on, John, what did
Sorry.
you have to say?
Oh, sorry.
Procedurally, are we making a motion to deny, or are we making a motion to endorse the denial decision? What, just so we're, again, clear for what this should be.
So I think we are, I think we're making, well, George, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm looking at this page where you said what the decision is. We would be entertaining a motion to deny the project as proposed in the notice of project change at public deliberations today, and authorizing the chair to sign and issue the decision written on behalf of, the written decision on behalf of the board.
That's how I'd recommend doing the motion.
I'll
Thank
make that motion.
I'll
I will
second.
gladly second that motion.
Okay, so, so Elisa
Lisa said it
is
first.
making it, John is seconding.
Oh.
Okay, so just to reiterate, and we'll do the vote, but based on the foregoing findings in the decision we just went through on a motion by Elisa Allen, seconded by John Brescher, the board is going to vote on whether to deny the project as proposed in the notice of project change today, April 14th, 2025. And in that motion also, as per the decision states, authorize the chair, Susan McCarthy, to sign, and then the board will issue this written decision. So we will do a roll call vote. So an aye vote is a motion to deny. Elisa Allen,
Aye.
John Brescher,
Aye.
Lisa Botticelli,
Aye.
Jim Mondani,
Aye.
and myself, Susan McCarthy, aye. Okay, so the board has voted 5-0 to deny the project as proposed in the notice of project change. So that's it.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
And George, does that satisfy how I just said it? Does that satisfy what you needed for the record?
Yes, because the motion was also to authorize you to sign on behalf of the board.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, all right, great.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you,
Second.
Jim.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, so all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. the
Thank
ayes
you all.
have it. We are
Thanks
adjourned.
all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks very much.
Okay.